Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for joining us today at the Lismore Jobs Fair, and thank you for joining this presentation on creating a standout resume. My name is Anthony Allardyce. I'm from the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations. I'd like to introduce our guest presenter today, Monique Jeremiah from Exceptional Tuition and Resumes. Monique's come specially to give us this presentation today, some tips and advice on how to create a fantastic resume that stands out from the crowd. Monique, welcome.
Thank you very much, Anthony. All right, how's everyone today? Feeling good? Nice and pumped? Yep. Thank you for having me this morning. So basically, I'd like to present a seminar to you that's very practical because for me, I love to see our job seekers succeeding, and I would love to see you get the job that you absolutely love and have always desired, okay? So, first of all, all right, so presentation. Okay, so a little bit about our company. So we specialise in generally nursing and construction-based resumes. However, today, what my aim will be is to give you some really practical tips so that you can have a look at your own resume and basically evaluate it and add in the components that are missing in your resume. So in terms of my history, I've come from a human resources and training background. And I've been doing resume writing for the last 12 years, so I absolutely love that side of employment. For me, being in the training environment, I also love to find feedback for you as well. So if you have any questions along the way, feel free to ask. But today we'll be basically looking at the specific components of a resume to help you stand out. These are the sections of your resume which we'll be covering today. So the career objective, the career profile, personal characteristics, the education, employment history, achievements, and your references. Okay. So the first part of your resume is your career objective. So when you are writing a resume, the most important element that you need to have is to know in your mind exactly what kind of role you're applying for, okay? Because when recruiters are looking at your resume, what they normally do is check, have a glance and see whether you know your direction in your career, okay? So this is probably the most important part of your resume because it's going to be at the very top of your resume and straight after your contact details, okay? So when you write your career objective, it's basically a small paragraph and you should have it in just a couple of lines, basically telling the recruiter exactly what role you are targeting, okay? So when you write your career objective, it's not airy-fairy, it's very, very specific. So the first part, obviously, is in that first sentence, you should actually state what is the job title that you're applying for, okay? And in what capacity are you applying for? So are you looking for a full-time job or a part-time job or a casual job, okay? And if you are going for a specific industry, it's also important to focus on that as well, okay? Because the more specific you are, the easier it is for a recruiter to identify where they can position you or if there's a potential opportunity coming up, where they can place you, okay? So job title, the type of employment and the industry. Also in your career objective, you need to consider mentioning the location of where you're actually applying for, okay? Because remember, you don't want to be applying all over Australia. You want to be in the specific town, maybe that's closest to you. Or if you're going FIFO for a construction role, mention that as well, okay? Also, it's important to mention why you want to work in a particular role because passion is something that recruiters love, and myself as an employer, I love to see that people want to work with my organisation because it's in their heart, not only because they're skilled at the job but because it's in their heart, okay? So sell the passion. And also what is the other reason? So if you, for example, have an experience in a particular career, so say you've had a career for 10, 15 years in a particular industry, you may also like to mention that as well, okay? Because anything that sells you in that career objective is going to encourage the recruiter to keep going through your resume, okay? So after the career objective section, you may or may not like to put a career profile section as well, okay? So the career profile is basically a snapshot of what you've been doing in the last, say, 10 to 15 years, okay? And basically, it summarises what you bring to the table in terms of your employment history, okay? And what you can do is when you write your cover letter, you can also copy and paste that career profile section and put that into your cover letter as well. So the two sort of marry up together. So that's why I was saying before, it's so important to have your career objective very, very specific, because you're pretty much copying and pasting those first two sections of your career objective and career profile into your cover letter. And that's how the recruiters know exactly what sort of position you're going for, okay? So that's our two key sections. Now, after you've covered the career objective and career profile, you then need to pop in your personal characteristics. So personal characteristics is basically about, what you bring to the table as an employee. So communication skills is probably going to be one of your most important elements that you include, just in dot points. So communication may be like your technical skills, it could be your verbal skills, it could be your ability to use social media potentially in some aspect. It could also be how you relate to people as well, because some people are really gifted at dealing with people in person, others are better going behind scenes. So you might be good on the telephone, or you might be good in writing. So being able to identify specifically what is your key communication skills, okay? You might also be someone that's a good leader as well. So you might be able to communicate that with your ability to bring people together. Also, time management and organisation are important skills to mention, and your values. So, the aspect of loyalty is a really good word, I believe, to put into your resume, because good employers love loyal employees. Would you guys agree? Yep. And money can't buy that. It's something that's innate in people. So if you mention you're loyal, this is a good aspect, okay? And also your passions too. So showing why do you want to work in that company? Why do you want to work for that particular industry and that particular job? So you become the ideal employee for the recruiter, okay? Now, after that, you also should have a section called key skills in your resume. So what we normally do at Exceptional Tuition and Resumes is we break them down into 4 categories, okay? So the category of technical skills is basically the job skills that you do on the job. So let's take, for example, if you are a teacher. So a typical technical skill would be that you develop curriculum for high school students, okay? Another technical skill would be that you run lesson plans in the morning, or you develop lesson plans prior to educating your students. So the specific on-the-job skills is what your technical skills are. It's very practical. Your people skills. So in your people skills section, there's 2 ways you can approach it. So you could be talking more about your leadership competencies or your ability to work within a team, or you could put both in. It just depends on, I guess, what is the role level that you're going for. So again, in your career objectives section, you may like to mention that you have senior experience or whether you're going for an entry-level role, okay? So at any time, you may go for a different career, but obviously think about what level you want to go in as, okay? Because you don't want to put yourself in the deep end, but you also don't want to put yourself into a role that you have too much experience. So you've got to be really specific in what area you think you suit best, okay? Administration skills, so this is obviously some of your like data entry skills, for example, your clerical skills, things like that, and your IT skills. So some of you may really be good in social media currently, so mentioning the platforms that you are good in is a good skill, because a lot of jobs these days do have a component of this, okay? So being able to know what you can do in today's age is important, okay? So in your resume, put a skill section. Maybe go between 5 to 10 points, I'd say, per skill would be relevant, because then as a recruiter, they'll look at your resume and they'll say, yep, these points are valid. This is the keywords that I'm looking for when I'm recruiting for a particular job role, okay? Now, after the key skills section, you should do these things as well. So before you even write your resume, you should actually put all your certificates together, okay? Have them ready to go so that when you write your education section, you can quickly refer to these. Also, call your references as well before you put them on the resume so that they know that they could be called in the future, okay? So tip off your references. And make sure that your licenses are up to date, especially if you're going into a role that has a level of compliance. So quite commonly, like construction roles have licenses, yep, or if you're working with children, you're working with blue cards or working with children cards, those things. Make sure everything is up to date and put that on your resume, those dates as well. So the next part, so education. So when you write your resume, I would recommend breaking your education into different levels, okay? So tertiary qualification would be, for example, your bachelor's degree, if you have one. Or it could be your vet level education, which is like, for example, TAFEs and RTOs. So if you've done like a diploma or a certificate. You may also have in-house training as well. So, you know, in your past employment, you may have done a one-day workshop, for example, in a particular field. Put those courses in as well. Anything that you've done online as well could be very useful because there's a lot of free education which you can actually access in particular websites, okay? And these are all good for your resume because it shows that you're engaging in personal development, okay? So always, as a job seeker, aim to upskill however you can, okay? Because knowledge is power. Okay, so employment history, I would put after the education, okay? And this is how you would put it is do it from the most recent employment that you've had to the latest one, okay? And I would focus on probably the last 10 to 15 years as a maximum from when you put your employment in. So some of you may have actually been in a job for quite a long time, maybe 10, 15, 20 years perhaps, yep. So in this situation, this is great because you are considered a loyal employee. You know, you've stuck it out over the years. But for others, you may have had a few employment. So just obviously capture the key duties that you had in that role, okay? Capture the job title, the company, the years that you've been in the employment, okay, and also the location as well, okay? Because location's important so people can see where you've worked and whether you've worked from project to project or just been in a set area, okay? So employment's very important. And the duties, just put them in dot points. You don't need to put the word key responsibilities or job duties. Just put dot points straight underneath where you list the company and the job titles, okay? So to save space. So that's another thing too. For your resume, I would recommend that you just have 2 pages. That's fine. If you can, do 2 columns on each page, and that's how you get all the information together, okay? Because you want to capture as much information as you can about your resume without cutting off any important parts, okay? For people that have been employed, say, longer than 10 to 15 years, for those older roles, if it's really relevant to your resume, you may like to just list the company that you work for as the final points, but focus your attention on the last 10 to 15 years, okay? Because they are your most relevant roles in your career, all right? Okay, yep. And also, if you've been in a job which is too short term, I would just remove it from your resume. You know what I mean? Because employers sometimes will wonder why they're too short. If you've been in a job which has multiple projects, then state that in your resume that you work for an employer or a contractor and you then have project-based work, okay? But just that's more so for the tradies who are in the room, okay? Yep. Short term? I would say less than 3 months. Yeah, because generally for your probation, it's normally six months. Yeah, some projects may be 3 months, some may be even 2 weeks. If it's project based, include it. But if it's shorter than that, I would just remove it. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so your references, as we mentioned before, so I would just put 3 references on your resume as a maximum. Make sure that they are professional references if you can, just for the credibility of your resume. And again, as I said, make sure you call your references before you put them on the resume. Obviously, get their name, their position, the company, and their phone number will be sufficient. If you can get their email address, that's fine, but a phone number will be fine. If you can get their landline number, that will be ideal because that will show that the reference is in, I guess, in a business environment as well. Just this tiny finer details that can make a difference. And the other point too is, I wouldn't put the word references upon request. Now, the reason why I don't recommend that is because you don't want the recruiter to work harder than they have to already, going through all the applications, okay? So you basically just want to give them the references and let them choose who they want to call right as soon as they receive your application. Yes? If someone's overseas? Yep. I would say give the email address. That'll be the best, yeah. Because as long as you can get the references, make sure your references are still existing. They're still happy to accept you. Yep. Make sure they're still alive as well. I'm just being honest. Yep. Because you want the recruiter to basically make that call, get the positive word about you, and then go further in the application process. Okay. Okay. So also your achievements and community activities is really important. So some of you may actually do volunteering, I imagine, as a pastime. Some of you may do sponsorship. Maybe you work in your local like surf club, for example, things like that. I think it's very relevant to include these elements because employers love people who give their time to the community. And for me, that's something that I really appreciate, not only personally, but also in my company too. I look for these elements. I look for people that have done work experience as well, things like that, internships, anything that's beyond just the typical employment that you've had, because that shows recruiters that you go above and beyond your typical job duty, okay? So include things like that is relevant. If you have won any awards, for example, in your industry or even in your community, add those in because that shows that you bring something more to the table than just being an employee, okay? And you can achieve awards at any time of your life. So I would definitely include those. And, oh yes, so this is our contact details. So does anybody have any questions at all? No? All right, no worries. So I will be here later this afternoon as well on the tips and tricks for resume writing and interview skills, so I can definitely help you there. So our company is Exceptional Tuition and Resumes. And yes, I thank you so much for your time today. And yes, feel free also to come to the booth as well, so I can also look over your resumes too and give you some really detailed feedback as well, okay? So thank you everyone, and I wish you all the best today.
Thank you very much, Monique. Thanks for your attention, everybody. I just wanted to reiterate, as Monique was saying, she will be available, as well as some of our other employment service providers who have resume volunteers here to help. So if you are wanting to ask any questions or to seek some more information from Monique, she'll be available to chat in our resume assistance area, which is basically right in the middle of the room. So just once again, a big thank you to Monique for your time today. Thanks very much.